Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Leon from No More Lines. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe. Leave a like and a comment and watch the video to the very end. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the Autofilter and the Resize in order to resize a criteria off of data that you've filtered out with Autofilter and Excel VBA. Now, the importance of this is that you can easily identify things with the Autofilter function, and the Resize will let you not delete the column heading. So you can very quickly go through a list of criteria and delete out, or basically filter it out and then copy it into a different sheet. In this example, it's more useful for taking the data that you've identified with the Autofilter and then selecting it and then deleting it from the table itself. So I'm going to walk you through the subroutine I just created in order to do this. So to step through it, we're going to press F8 on our keyboard once we've selected the VBA window, and that'll allow us to step through the code. As you can see, there's a yellow arrow, and that yellow arrow is running the code as I press F8. So we're going to do range A1 select. So we're going to select range A1. This particular line of code, it simulates control shift and down on the first part. So range A1.endXL down simulates control shift and down on the keyboard. So it basically will start at whatever cell you're at, and it's going to select the information until it reaches a blank cell. And the second part is going to be where it's going to select range A1.endXL to right. So it's the same thing, but now it's going to go to the right. So it's going to go down and then to the right, and it's going to select everything there. So once I run this, you'll see that it's going to select the whole table. Now, the importance of this is that that way, when you use the Autofilter, it'll filter out, and you'll be very, very specific in what you filter out. But of course, your table needs to not have anything missing. You need to make sure that every value or every cell in that table has a value in it. And here we're going to use the Autofilter. So we're going to do Selection.Offset, and there are two different components. The first component is going to be the field, and it's going to be field 2, and that's going to be the column number itself. So it's going to be column B. So it's going to be the group. And the criteria 1 is going to be IT. So once I step through this, you'll see that it'll filter out for the group IT, and it'll only show me the 2 records where the criteria is for IT. So you see here that this is where our Resize comes into place. And the Resize has 2 components. The first component is the amount of offset that you're going to use to initiate the Resize. And what I mean is that, so the first part is where Selection.Offset, that's the first part of it. And offset has 2 different parameters. The first parameter is going to be the row number itself, or the number of rows, and that is before the comma. And the second number is going to be the number of columns that it's going to offset. And our second component is going to be the Resize itself. And the Resize is just going to basically be the number of columns, the number of rows within the table itself minus 1. So to read it in a literal sense, it's saying that we're going to resize this table by one row based off of the number of rows within the table minus 1. So here it's going to basically get rid of the selection where the column headings are selected. So it's going to just, instead of it being 3 rows selected, it's going to be 2. So it's going to basically leave the column headings alone within the selection. And of course, I'm going to go and delete this out. And of course, I'm going to press OK. And then from here, it's going to take out the 2 records for the IT group. And that is essentially how you use the Resize. So let me show you another example of this, but this time I'm going to show you where I'm going to change the offset. Instead of it being 1, it's going to be 2, and I'm going to show you how the offset reacts. You're only going to really need to change the offset if, for example, you're using a table that has 2 columns in the beginning, or an example where you don't want to delete out the first few columns. That is where you're going to actually change the offset. But in most cases, you want to set it how I have it in this first example. That's the way that it's going to work pretty consistently. But I'm going to show you how it's going to look if I change it. So I'm going to run through the same steps, but this time I'm going to do a criteria of column C for exempt, and I'm going to use the criteria as yes. And I'm going to show you now that when I change the resize or the offset on it, instead of it offsetting on the first row, it's going to offset on the second row this time. So when I do that, it's going to now offset the whole selection by 2 rows instead of 1. And you see that the first name Morris Anderson, it was actually adjusted based off of that. So you see that you don't really want to do that. You actually want to leave it to where it's based on an offset of 1. So I'm going to change it back, and I'm going to show you that once we change it back, it's going to work how we intended it to work. You see that, again, the purpose of this is to take out the column heading. So when we delete it out, it leaves the column headings there. And when we delete it out, it's going to delete out the records that are exempt. So anything exempt is going to be yes, and then we're going to be left with all no's now. And lastly, what I'm going to show you is that there's a way to not show the alerts when I delete items out within the table. If you're automating this, you're going to see that prompt, and it's going to stop your automation. So let me show you 2 lines of code I add to every automated VBA I create. It's application.displayAlerts.false and application.screenUpdating.false. These 2 particular lines, it makes it to where your VBA can run automatically without any user prompts. Basically, when you delete out any sheets or rows or columns or anything, you're not going to get a prompt for it. And screen updating, it makes it to where the screen doesn't flicker, and because sometimes when you do complex things, the screen flickers and it moves around, and it takes a little bit more processing power and a little bit more time. So I always make sure that I put this in here, especially when I'm automating things. And I'm going to show you that when I run this again. Now when we do our delete, we're not going to see a prompt when we go and delete it out. So you see now that that prompt is gone. But as an aside, whenever I have this, I always go back and I put those 2 options back. I always try to reset my parameters in Excel when I'm ever doing things like that. So I always set them back as true afterwards. So hopefully this was helpful. I'm going to leave this example and a link in the description box. You're free to use it. If you have any suggestions or any ideas on what you want me to cover, let me know. In my next video, I'm going to show you a couple more options for the Autofilter. As of right now, Autofilter has only has 2 criteria. You can do a criteria 1 or 2 and a operation and or. But I'm going to show you a way to actually get out of that, and you'll be able to use an array function to select multiple criteria. So thanks for watching the video. You have a blessed day, and you take care.